Okay, our third place finisher in today's 10th annual AAA Texas 500 Texas Motor Speedway is Brad Keselowski. He drove the number 2 Miller Lite Ford and came in third. Brad, certainly a gritty performance out there by the number 2 Miller Lite team. You knew what you had to do to get back in this championship hunt, and I believe if I calculated it right, you're about 5 points on the other side. And
yes, sir.
So congratulations on your performance today. Just talk about it.
Yeah, we just weren't as fast as we wanted to be pretty much all weekend, and it was a scratch and claw fest. We needed some breaks to get back in it, and every time I thought we were going to catch one, it would kind of fall short, whether it was we came in and put tires on, drove all the way up to 5th, and really needed to get to 4th so we could be in one of the front 2 lanes, and the yellow came out, and that jammed us up, and then another yellow came out, and that jammed us up, and then another yellow came out. It was just one, consecutive loop of yellow after yellow after yellow, and we just couldn't get any momentum, and we just weren't quite as fast as we wanted to be. But Paul Wolf and the guys did a great job of never giving up, adjusting, having some pretty good strategy at the end, and almost made a win out of it despite that. But in the end, Jimmy was just stronger than we were. Even with a little bit older tires, he was just stronger. I just didn't have the turn that I needed to really run with him, and he did a great job in holding us off. So, that's just was kind of the story of the night, and then the stuff afterwards, which I'm sure you guys will ask your own questions about. I'm doing everything I can to win this championship, racing at 100%, and that's something I'm not going to be ashamed for. If I was out there wrecking guys to do it, that'd be one thing, but a little bit of rubbing, I think, is probably how this sport was created and probably how it should move forward. And I don't mind getting raced that way, and I don't mind racing that way. I got a little rub there at the end too from the 4 car, and it's just good racing. So proud of our effort. I just wish I would have been able to make 2 more spots out of it, but very, very close, and we'll keep fighting the good fight.
Questions for Brad, raise your hand. We'll go with George and then Jeff. George, then Jeff, then Drew.
No questions?
I think we got a couple.
Brad, George Diaz right here in front of you with
Yes,
the
sir.
Orlando Sentinel. You alluded to it, but if you can elaborate, you seem to you're making a lot of enemies in the garage, obviously, because of your aggressive racing. But can you just elaborate? You seem to be fine with that because it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, the sport, specifically the driving corps, is stuck in the year 1999-2000, and with the testing bans and the COT cars and all these different things that have happened, the only way for a guy like me to break through is to drive the way I've drove over the last 4 or 5 years. I think last year I got away from being as aggressive as I was in 2012 and this year, and I didn't make the chase. Won 1 race. That's not acceptable to me. I'm here to win races for Roger Penske and for my team, and that means when there's a gap, I have to take it. If it requires a tiny bit of rubbing, that's okay, and it's not anything I don't expect on the other side. Plenty of times where I got rubbed, and it'll go both ways, and that's okay by me. I'm not asking anyone to take something that I'm not trying to dish out something I couldn't take myself, George. But these guys have their own code, and they race differently than that, and that's their right. And we'll go through these battles. I've gone through them before and come out stronger, and I'll go through them again and come out stronger and a better race car driver. But what I'm not going to do is back down. I'm not going to get in the spot where I was in 2013, where I tried to be exactly what they all wanted me to be, because what they want me to be is a loser, and I'm not here to lose. I'm here to win, and that means I'm going to have to drive my car harder, stronger, faster than everybody out there, and that's what I feel like I did today. My team did a great job of rallying, but the reality is we had a 10th to 15th place car that almost won today, and that happened because of that attitude and that fight. And that's going to make some people mad because they don't race that way. I understand that. But I'm not willing to, or I'm not, like I said, I'm not trying to dish something out I couldn't take. The way I race today is what I would define as great racing. That is define this sport. And I hope it will continue to define it for years to come. And if a guy like me caves, whether it's Jeff Gordon, Carl Edwards, list out the drivers that I've had run-ins with, whenever they try to push back on me, if I cave, then that'll end that run in the sport, and that'll be a shame. That'd be a shame for everybody. It'd be a shame for the history of the sport. It'd be a shame for the fans that come here to see us race 100%, and that's what I did today. And for that, I'm not going to be ashamed. Would I be disappointed if I went out there and just dumped somebody to win the race? Yeah, I think you look through my history of racing, George, and that's never been the case. That's not the way I race. I don't wreck people to win. I've been in incidents at the end of the race, but I can say with a clear mind and heart that they weren't intentional and that they were all out going for the win, and sometimes things happen. Today, something happened. There was a gap. It closed up. By the time it closed up, I was committed, and I stayed in it. And that almost won me the race. It hurt somebody else's day, and that's a shame. But the reality is there was a gap. And, you know, I'm not Dale Earnhardt or Ayrton Senna, but I've read how they raced and how great they were to the sport. And they would sit here and tell you that they would go for that same gap. I'm not them, but I'm inspired by that, and I'm going to race that way.
We'll go to Jeff, then Drew. Jeff?
Jeff Gluck from USA Today. A couple weeks ago, when we were asking about retaliation and things like that, you said that, you know, it wouldn't really benefit anybody to get in some sort of long-term back and forth because you're going to be here for years, they're going to be here for years, so
Yes.
it doesn't really help you down the road. So, I mean, I heard what you just said and everything, but how does that impact your chances of winning a championship, especially in a format where everybody's going to be even? Now you have guys possibly gunning for you. Are you worried about that?
Well, it doesn't help, and I'm not trying to sit here and sugarcoat it or try to be the intimidator and tell them they better not race. That's not what I'm trying to say. My expectation is that if there's a gap, they'll go for it, and if there's a gap, I'll go for it. And if it closes up and there's contact, then that's racing. And that's what happened today. Intentional wrecking and whatnot, no, I don't support that. I never have. I make it a point to try not and do it. I'm not always innocent of not doing it. You know, I've had to run into Charlotte and so forth after the race. I could have had intentional wrecks during that race if I wanted to, and was certainly frustrated enough to do so, but didn't. Will those guys race me hard or harder than others? Absolutely. I'm certain they will. But that's just part of it, and I can't fault them for that. You know, I just feel like I have to go for the gap if it's there, and I have to race the way I race, or I won't even be in NASCAR. And I'd rather have enemies in NASCAR than have friends and be sitting at home.
Do you think that they're, you know, like Harvick said about Kenseth, that, oh, we're not basically not going to let him win the championship? Are you worried that the list?
Yeah, the rhetoric gets pretty thick, you know, and I'm sure that all plays into the intimidation factor or the attempt to intimidate. But going back to what I've said earlier, you know, I've already gone much further than I thought I'd ever go in this sport with the mentality that I have. I'm not going to give up on it because there's some resistance now. That would be a shame. That'd be a tragedy. I'm going to continue to push forward to what I'm doing. It served me in the past, and I believe it'll serve me in the future.
We'll go to Drew, then we'll go to Bob Pockris, then we'll go to the press box.
Brad, Drew Davison with the Forest Star Telegram. Do you kind of relish being the villain? When you're kind of shown on the screen, a lot of fans booed you. Do you enjoy that role?
Well, you know, I don't necessarily enjoy being disliked, but it beats the alternative of not being known at all by a long ways. And, you know, from my perspective, I think I've come to the reality that there's a lot worse things in this world than me. So if I'm a villain, the people that think I'm a villain have a pretty good life and should be proud of that. You got all this stuff that's going on in the world, and if your villain is me racing 100%, you've got it pretty good, and I don't feel too bad for you.
Let's go to Bob Pockris, then we'll go to press box.
Bob Pockris, Sporting News. Did you actually get hit and through all that?
Yeah,
really?
I couldn't even tell you what happened. Just a melee of people, and I couldn't tell you what happened after the race. That's why there's cameras.
And do you have any qualms with Harvick kind of getting himself in there and telling you to go fight your
Yeah,
own fight?
I came here to race, not fight. If I wanted to be a fighter, I would have joined the UFC, or I'd have a management team like he does. But I came here to race 100%, and that's what I did today, Bob. And, the only thing I wouldn't be proud of is I went and started fights or jumped in fights. I wouldn't be proud of that. I didn't come here to fight. I came here to race 100%. And the people that want to see fights aren't true race fans. And they need to watch UFC and WWE because that's not what racing is. But that's okay. I know that in my heart that I raced 100% and that I did what should be done to be a professional race car driver.
Okay, let's go to press box.
Question for Brad. Wolfgang Monzer from Germany, Rennsport Press Agency. Brad, early in the race, I think lap 70, 65, like that, it was mentioned during the coverage on TV that you had problems with vibrations. Can you get into a little bit more details? Could it be fixed, or did you expect at that time that you maybe finish third? Because at the end, just looking on your car, it seems that you had unbelievable speed.
Yeah, every other run we'd have a vibration. It didn't really add up, Wolfgang. I don't know the answer to your question, but it seemed to be intermittent. I could have been tires, could have been wheels, could have been a number of things, but I'm not sure at this time to answer your question fairly.
Go ahead, press box.
Chris Knight, CatchRants.com. Brad, 7th in points heading to Phoenix next week. Do you approach the race as you did today, even know what happened at the conclusion of the race?
Yeah, I think most likely we're going to have to win Phoenix, just like I felt like we were going to have to win here today. There's, I'm sure, going to be some contact along the way across the board. Everybody's very desperate. The points are very, very, very close. Anyone can have a bad day and be out of it, and that's just the reality.
Any more in the press box? Okay, let's come back downstairs. I believe Jerry Fraley had one, and then Kenny Bruce.
Jerry Fraley, Dallas Morning News. Brad, on the subject of Phoenix, can you compartmentalize now and just quickly forget about this, not get overly emotional, and take a cool, clinical approach to Phoenix?
Well, I think if you can tell right now, Jerry, I'm not too emotional about it. I've come to the reality of where I am in this sport, and the fight that's going to take for me to be a winner and a champion for years to come. Like I said, there's going to be moments like this. I've been through them in the past. I'll go through them in the future, and I'll come back each and every time just as hard, if not harder. That's who I am, and that's what I'll do. So I plan to do the same thing next week and any other week in my future.
We'll go Kenny Bruce, and then Stan Creekmore had a question. Stan's done. Go ahead, Kenny.
Kenny Bruce with NASCAR.com. Brad, obviously it's not the first time you've had a situation like this, but the last time after Charlotte, you guys went to Martinsville later that week and tested, and you personally were able to just kind of put everything that had happened in the background and focus on what you wanted to do. How does your team react to this? Because it's going to be talked about for an entire week until we get to Phoenix.
Yeah.
How do they handle stuff like that and focus on what they need to do?
Well, a lot of my strength personally comes from my team. Whether that's the guys who work on the team or my boss, Roger Penske. If Roger Penske came up to me tomorrow and said, Brad, you drove that race wrong, you shouldn't have done what you did, it would affect me. But the management team at Penske tells me to drive the way I did and tells me there's nothing to be ashamed of and continues to support me. And they're my boss. My boss isn't the other drivers in the field. My boss is them. And as long as they're on my side, I feel strong and I feel proud and encouraged to continue to dig.
Will your team be able to focus on what
My team's pretty strong, yeah. They'll probably get a couple good laughs out of it and be even more hungry.
Got time for one more question for Brad. Anybody? Upstairs, downstairs. We'll take the gentleman there in the ball cap, and that'll be it.
JTQ, TTU, the hub. Do you worry about with 2 races left that if a driver that you've pissed off can't win, just make sure that he dumps you and that you're not going to win the last 2 races?
Well, I think Jeff Gluck was alluding to that earlier. I'm going to be in the sport for a while. We've got the safest cars in the world. I can take some pretty hard hits. I've taken them before. I'll be back next week, and they'll have to face me. And that's probably not in their interest, just like it's not in mine. if what I did was so wrong to those individuals, then they should race me back that same way. And they have that ability, and I wouldn't be mad at them if they did. But I didn't go out there and intentionally wreck anyone or do any of that other hoopla. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, it's not the biggest concern in the world. Can it happen? Yeah, absolutely. If it does happen, I'll take it in stride and race them back the same way.
Go ahead.
And that'll be it.
Okay, Brad, congratulations on a heck of a performance here today. Good
Thank
luck
you,
at
Kerry.
Phoenix.